Let's speak now to Mpumelelo Mkhabela, a political analyst who's also written about this process before. Mpumelelo, thank you so much for your time. You've made your points clear when one reads some of what you've said when you saw even and talking about some of the candidates that were vying for this particular position. Now we are here not getting the 2/3 majority. Your reaction?
Good evening, Bongi. Well, I think the failure by the Reverend Frank Chikane to secure 2/3 majority support from the National Assembly is a function of the dysfunctionality of the ANC in Parliament. They have failed to lobby and to secure consensus among other political parties at the interviewing stage or selection stage of the process, which was done by the Standing Committee of Intelligence, where the ANC commands a majority, but obviously not sufficient enough for their recommendation to get a 2/3 majority in the National Assembly. So I think the ANC in Parliament is increasingly getting disorganized. It's losing influence as in like being able to influence other opposition parties on matters that are critical. And this is one of the most critical issues in our country, because this position has got to do with the appointment of a civilian who would oversee the functioning of our intelligence operators on the ground, making sure they don't abuse their power. So this position is almost equivalent to a position of the public protector, although it's in Chapter 11 of the Constitution, as opposed to the public protector being on Chapter 9. But all of the functions that you would expect of the public protector, those functions would apply in the intelligence space in relation to this position. So it's the fact that the ANC couldn't command or secure consensus for their preferred candidate, albeit they being the majority party, is actually a function of that dysfunctionality in Parliament.
Now, the fact that they even pushed ahead with this particular candidate without securing the required numbers, would you say that was also setting him up for failure?
Well, I wouldn't, because I think that they were convinced that they would secure a majority when it comes to the voting stage. However, I mean, again, this is a sign that the ANC, it's losing its political capabilities in Parliament, because they should have foreseen at the stage of the interviews that the other parties are not with them. But somehow they miraculously thought that at the last stage, at the voting in the National Assembly plenary, there would be an approval. But I don't think they would have set him up for failure per se. The Reverend is a very experienced bureaucrat in government. He's also been a politician, and he has served at the highest level of government as a Director General during President Thabo Mbeki's time. So I would imagine that the ANC would have tried to get someone of his character to try to give some integrity to that office. However, there is so much that I think was wrong with his candidature in the first place. One, he's, I think, 71 years old. He's supposed to be on pension, on retirement. And number two, because he has served in government and he has been a high-profile figure in the ANC, and the intelligence has been so politicized. So there's a yearning for a fresh voice, a fresh overseer of our intelligence capabilities, who is not aligned to any factions in the governing party or in government, and who can do their job impartially, which is what this position demands. So I'm not taking anything away from the Reverend's background and his credentials, but I think that there's a bit of a baggage around him, which other parties have realized that it won't work if you want to clean the intelligence, which is now mired in too many controversies, too many dirty dealings, and too many wrong things that have been going on there.
And some have said that it also raises some of the succession issues around state matters. But I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this one, especially when we talk about the issue of age, because the EFF also raised that particular issue. But ANC Deputy Chief Whip Doris Lakude, for example, being quoted in one publication I was reading, saying that the IGI is that position you cannot give to a young person, because if you do, the country will be sold for 15 cents in the next minute. She later, of course, withdrew this particular statement. But I'm keen to hear from you on what she said in the first place, because that did not seem to resonate very well with some of the MPs.
Well, I'm glad that she actually withdrew that statement, because it's actually rubbish. I mean, you're suggesting that in this month of June, when we commemorate all the young people who fought for this country, June 76, they were high school kids, but you can't say they were not patriotic. They fought for the freedom of this country. And even now, young people are the ones that are actually struggling and bearing the brunt of all the economic hardships. So to suggest that they are less patriotic compared to old people is actually nonsense. But it doesn't mean that any person is much more patriotic than the other based on age. What is required here, Bongiwe, is for Parliament to look at what is it, given the state of our intelligence now, what is it that is required? I'll tell you what's the state of our intelligence now. Number one, the intelligence has been politicized and factionalized by the ANC. Number two, the intelligence capabilities of this country have dropped to the point that we are not able to foresee threats, both internal and external threats that are posing danger to the security of the country. So intelligence divisions and individuals within those divisions are focused on factional battles of the ANC. Number three, state funds that are meant to prop up the capabilities of intelligence to do its work have been misused, have been stolen and distributed among individuals. There's been a lot of nepotism in the state intelligence system. So the question then is, given that state of affairs, which is basically summarizing, given that state of affairs, what kind of individual do you need? You need a very young, energetic person. You need a very professional person of integrity who has no scandal, who is clean, and who can then be the proper overseer of our intelligence operators on the ground. That will give confidence to South Africans that actually the intelligence is intent on reforming itself to serve the country, not individuals or factions of the ruling party.
Especially if you look even at that high-level review panel report, which laid bare the issues of factionalism within the state intelligence. But do you think, though, where we find ourselves right now, we could be back to that moment in 2015 where we saw, this position remaining unfilled as the ANC was insisting on its candidate until they had to abandon the candidate in 2016 without getting the required support? Do you foresee them pushing through here, or will they simply start looking at another candidate? What do you think?
I think with the decline of the ANC's strategic capabilities in Parliament or even in other sides of the state, it's likely that we can go back to that problematic scenario that we've just painted, because the focus is on compromising on an individual candidate instead of saying, let's look at what are the key issues, what are the key characteristics that we are looking at. Let the parliamentarians of different political parties bargain on the key attributes of the person they're looking for, not a particular name. And then you're going to then look for a name to match those attributes. For as long as they're not doing that, they're actually communicating a message to the whole of society that they are interested in personal, factional fights. They're not interested in what is actually in the best interest of the country. And that's very sad.
Let's see how this one plays out in Mpumelelo, especially because there's a lot of issues, as you've alluded to as well, with the state intelligence. At the same time, we saw these being laid bare in the State Capture Commission and even in that high-level review panel report. But let's leave it there for now and see what the next installment then becomes here. That's Mpumelelo Mkhabela, political analyst.